This video is about making a sculpture out of a balloon of clay. So I'm going to start off with about 2 pounds of clay. It's a fairly decent amount of clay. It holds in both my hands. And I'm going to work on making it into a round ball. Okay, so now I'm going to take this ball of clay and I want to cut it in half. I'll just take a simple knife and cut it as much in the middle as I can. So here are my 2 halves of clay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pinch pot style for each one of these, but I have to make sure to keep them both as even as possible. And the other thing is I don't want it as thin as I would my pinch pot bowl. I want it a little bit thicker because it's got to be a little bit tougher. So I'm going to pinch in here. And this you can see a little bit easier because it's already kind of open. So I'm going to try and keep that shape curved in as much as I can, as if I cut an orange in half, and I'm keeping those orange sections. As if I took the fruit out and I left all the skin of the orange. Okay, there's one. It's not perfect, it's not pretty, but it does the job. So it's a little bit thicker. I'm going to set that one aside, and I'll do my next one. Okay, let me check and make sure that these are about the same size. So you see that they're both hollow, they're both a little thick, but they are about the same size. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to score them. I always have a bucket of water handy because it's nice to be able to kind of dip my tools in the water. And it's also nice to kind of rinse my fingers and rinse my tools when I'm done. So I always have that bucket kind of handy. All right, so now the other thing is because I use water on the tools, the clay now got a little bit wet, and it'll help kind of glue the piece together. So I'm going to line this up kind of as carefully as I can, and I'm going to squeeze it together. Really putting a little bit of pressure on it to make sure that this is stuck together well. Okay, so then what I do, once I know that it's together and I don't see any gaps, I'm going to start blending it. If you find that there's some areas where it kind of looks a little bit like a hamburger that got closed together and there's a weird little bump, which is pretty normal, you can take a little coil of clay and you can fill in that gap. But I don't think I need to do that. It's an okay shape. So I'm just going to now work it in my hands and try to kind of smooth it out using the palms of my hands. And you're going to spend some time really making this not too smooth. It doesn't matter too much yet because you are going to be making a sculpture out of this. So all the sculpting is going to help smooth it out even more. So this ball of clay now is hollow. It's literally like a balloon of clay. So just one thing I want everyone to know first. When you're all finished with whatever you create from this, you have to just do one simple thing, and this little simple thing is really important. So let me find my needle tool. Here's my needle tool. You can also, by the way, use like a bamboo skewer. That works too. So you could just kind of poke that, the skewer. When you're done doing everything, maybe you added a head and legs and some other things, simply poke a hole all the way through until you almost hear a little sound like a balloon collapsing, but don't do it yet. You actually want the air inside to stay trapped in order to help build things, because it kind of resists you squishing it. So the air really helps a lot. So keep that air inside as long as you can. So now with this ball of clay, there are a lot of different things you can do with it. One thing I always like to think about are little animals. And animals don't just have to be round, like they don't have to be, say, an elephant or a pig or a penguin. They can be all kinds of things. The only animal I always tell my students you probably don't want to do is a snake. Not appropriate for this particular technique. Okay. Other than that, you can make all kinds of fun animals. So now I'm going to start to shape this so it's going to be more like the body of an animal. So as you notice, now I'm squishing it and it's no longer round. It's more like a football or potato shape. And that air inside is really helping me push that clay around. So let's say I wanted to just do a simple, just a simple little animal. I'll start with some of my extra scraps of clay here. And maybe this is the body of the animal. And also, just so you know, if you want to have an animal just sitting up, like maybe a cat or something, it can be sitting up and this is still the body of the animal. But if you want to have an animal maybe standing, you're going to want to lay that on its side. So with the head, just a solid ball of clay now, but I'm going to probably make another little pinch pot. And make sure you're scoring it. Now here is a thing where you're going to have to release that. Let me see where I want that, maybe here. You're going to want to make sure that there's no air trapped between your new pinch pot if you're making a head. Add some water here. So when this is the case, you are going to need to release some air. I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to poke a hole right here. And I'm also going to poke a hole here. Well, not now, later. But you're going to want to have a hole in there later because you need to create like a little vent. So I'm going to take this and I might add a little coil of clay. We call these coils, and then make like a little collar and blend that in, because you don't want it to look like you just stuck on a little ball of clay. You want it to look like, oh, now here's the head or the neck or whatever of this animal. So blend that all around, and now this has become a part. A little bit more clay here. Okay, and then some things don't have to be hollow, but if it's going to be thicker than about a half an inch or so, you're going to probably want to hollow out whatever this is. So this could be any kind of animal. It could be, I don't know, maybe even a duck. I like ducks; they're kind of fun. But it could be any kind of little critter. But if you want to add legs, obviously you'll need to add them below. Could be, maybe it's a deer lying down or a horse or something. It could be a lot of things. As soon as you start adding legs, just be mindful of the fact that this clay it's still pretty heavy because it's wet, and wet clay is always heavier than dry clay. It's going to want to weight down your legs. So if you do add some legs, you're going to need to kind of put your animal sideways and then score on let me use my needle on this one, and score on your areas where the legs might be. I don't know what my little critter is yet. I change my mind a lot until I decide what makes me happy. You could make a fish, you can make all kinds of things, dolphins, anything you want. So, but if I want to add my 4 legs, I'd score that. And depending on what the animal is, I'm going to make little cylinders, little 4 cylinders. And you can decide if you want yours to be super realistic. That's great. If you want it just kind of more fun and kind of, I call it ceramic-y, more playful, that's great too. So many examples on the internet, so please feel free to look at some ideas that kind of inspire you. But make sure that your legs are nice and even. And you're going to want to kind of line them up. One more to go. And then I'm going to set this aside here so I can check my legs of my creature yet to be named and make sure that that's kind of pretty even. And then I'm going to want to, of course, smooth these out. And all these animals have different kinds of types of feet and legs, of course. But right now I'm just going to do a simple thing. Smooth that out a little bit. So let me get that on there. I'll score each bottom of my legs. That's going to attach to the body. Can I get this area wet? And I'm going to just put these little guys on here. I'm pressing down to really make sure they're attached. Okay. So, and now obviously I need to spend some time smoothing this out and shaping this. And also, I don't want to just stick them on like that. I want to make sure that each leg is very well attached. So again, I'll probably want to add a little coil of clay around each leg and then blend this in so it's now part of the body. Always make sure to do that nice blending technique. Don't let it look like it just got stuck on. No matter how simple or complex your animal is, just really get that blended in nicely. So I'm going to do that to all 4. But before I do, I just want to show you, if I were to then take this and let it sit like this, it might be fine for just a couple of minutes. And I can test it and make sure that everything's level and even and all of that. But the more I let it sit, the more this is going to sink down, and then it's going to kind of sink into the body. So once you're done kind of putting the legs on, you'll want to maybe set it sideways and let it rest a little bit. Sometimes what I even do, if I have, I know I'm going to be working for a while, I'll take like a cloth. I always have a cloth handy when I'm working, and I'll create what I call a little nest. And the other thing I usually do is I'll put like plastic over it, but then I might nest it a little bit like it's sitting in its own little bed. And that actually helps support the weight of all of the clay until it's a little bit stiffer when I'm ready for the next steps of adding all of my details. But in the meantime, I'm just kind of making a basic form. And this is your basic balloon animal. More details will come soon.